Every day we wake up to news that reminds us of how fragile life truly is. Today, the world lost four remarkable American legends. People who inspired us, entertained us, and shaped our culture in ways we'll never forget. Their stories remind us that greatness isn't about how long we live. It's about the mark we leave behind.
A quiet sadness settled across the disability community today, as confirmation arrived of the passing of activist and author Alice Wong. She was a voice many depended on, a steady force who challenged systems with honesty, clarity, and compassion. And now her story enters a new chapter, one held in memory, in movement, and in the voices she helped lift. Alice Wong was born on March 27, 1974. From her earliest years, she understood what it meant to navigate a world not built for everyone. But instead of accepting its limits, she learned to question them. She learned to speak up. And over time, she learned to build spaces where others could speak as well. Her life became a journey of advocacy. Not loud, not staged, but persistent, patient, and deeply human. When she founded the Disability Visibility Project in 2014, it began as an oral history partnership with StoryCorps. The goal was simple: preserve disabled stories before they were lost. Yet the project grew into something far larger. It became a community, a gathering of voices, a platform for personal truth. Alice believed every story had meaning, every experience carried insight, and every person deserved to be heard. Friends say that this belief shaped her entire career. One colleague once noted, Alice didn't just open doors, she held them open long enough for others to feel safe walking through. During her years of rising influence, she wrote essays, edited collections, and authored a powerful memoir titled Year of the Tiger. Her writing combined clarity with courage. She did not soften the realities of ableism. She did not hide the weight disabled people often carry. Instead, she gave those truths shape and language. And in doing so, she gave others a place to see themselves. Her national recognition followed naturally. In 2013, she was appointed by President Obama to the National Council on Disability. She later became a MacArthur Fellow in 2024, a rare honor recognizing creativity and impact. But those who knew her say she remained the same, humble, sharp, and community-focused. One friend shared online, Alice never wanted to be the center. She wanted the circle to be bigger. Her activism deepened in later years as global crises unfolded. During the Gaza genocide, she helped co-found Cribs for Esms for Gaza, a project dedicated to keeping communication lines open for families enduring isolation and danger. The effort raised millions. It showed how disability activism could stand firmly with other struggles, weaving solidarity across continents. By then, Alice was already recognized internationally. Her voice carried weight not just in policy rooms, but in universities, on social media, in hospitals, and in living rooms where disabled people often felt unseen. She reminded people that advocacy was not only protest, it was care, it was storytelling, it was survival. Her passing on November 14, 2025, brought a wave of grief. For many, it felt as though the world had lost one of its clearest mirrors, someone who reflected society back to itself and asked with quiet force, "Can't we do better?" Tributes poured in within hours. Writers thanked her for mentorship. Disabled teenagers thanked her for giving them a future to imagine. Parents thanked her for creating a world where their children could feel valued, not pitied. A disability rights advocate wrote, Alice showed us that visibility is not about being seen in the spotlight. It's about being seen as human. Through the middle years of her life, Alice lived with increasing health challenges. She was transparent about them, not for sympathy, but for truth. She believed that hiding disability fed stigma, and she refused to contribute to that silence. Her ventilator, her assistive technology, her adaptations, these were not weaknesses. They were tools of empowerment. She often said that accessibility was not charity. It was a right. Her presence online grew stronger as her physical strength changed. Twitter became her storytelling ground. Instagram became a way to celebrate others. She spoke about joy, frustration, politics, culture, and daily life as a disabled woman of color. People connected to her openness. They trusted her sincerity. Those who collaborated with her remember her discipline. She edited with precision. She asked thoughtful questions. She challenged assumptions gently, with the calm authority of someone who has lived what others only theorize about. In the years before her passing, she edited two major anthologies, Disability Visibility and Disability Intimacy. Together, they created a new archive for modern disability literature. These books were not just collections. They were declarations. They told the world that disabled people could write their own narratives full of humor, grief, romance, desire, conflict, and triumph. Her work helped shift disability from a medical issue to a cultural identity. Scholars say her influence will echo for decades, even in her quieter moments. Alice was thinking of community. Friends recall late-night messages filled with ideas, names of people she wanted to uplift, and reminders to care for one another. She believed in connection. She believed in collective progress. Her final years were a blend of recognition and fragility. She continued working despite health setbacks. She continued organizing even when it required extraordinary coordination. And she continued dreaming of a future where accessibility was not an afterthought, but a foundation. Her death leaves a space that feels impossible to fill, but her work leaves a path that thousands now walk today. The disability community remembers her with gratitude. Writers remember her as a guide. Activists remember her as a mentor. Readers remember her as a lifeline. And the broader world remembers her as someone who pushed conversations forward with empathy and purpose. Her story is not defined by her challenges. It is defined by her vision, one that insisted on dignity, representation, and truth. As the day closes, many are sharing her own words. A line she wrote years ago now feels like a goodbye. The world is better when we listen to each other, fully and without rushing. Alice Wong taught the world to slow down, to listen, and to see disabled lives as whole and powerful. She leaves behind a legacy of courage, community, and storytelling that will continue to guide new generations. And though her voice is now silent, her impact remains a steady light in the ongoing work toward justice and inclusion. Tonight, we remember Alice Wong, a woman who changed what visibility means, and whose memory will continue to shape the world she fought so hard to heal. A quiet ripple of sadness moved through America's newsrooms today as word spread of the passing of veteran journalist James Avila. He was a steady presence on television for decades, a calm voice guiding viewers through some of the nation's most complex legal moments. And now, the man who once explained justice to millions has taken his final bow, leaving behind a legacy shaped by truth and integrity. James Avila was born on July 26, 1955. From an early age, he understood the power of stories. He knew that information could help people feel less afraid, that facts, delivered with fairness, could bring light into difficult times. His career grew from that belief. Step by step, he became one of the most trusted legal reporters in the country. His path in journalism began with local newsrooms. They were loud, crowded spaces filled with urgency and grit. James learned quickly. He learned how to chase a lead, how to handle pressure, how to speak clearly when others struggled to find the right words. These early years shaped his confidence and his quiet, disciplined style. By the time he joined ABC News, he had already built a reputation for accuracy and composure. But national television brought wider responsibility. Millions of viewers were depending on him, and he took that duty seriously. As ABC senior law and justice correspondent, James became a familiar face during some of the biggest cases in modern America. Courtroom battles, national controversies, high-profile verdicts. He stood at the center of them, translating complicated legal details into language the public could understand. His voice carried the weight of experience. His reporting carried the weight of truth. Colleagues often said he had a gift for clarity. One former producer shared, "When James explained a case, everything slowed down. The noise faded and the story made sense." His work took him into intense and emotional moments. Families seeking justice, victims waiting for answers, communities struggling to heal. James approached each story with empathy. He understood that behind every headline was a human life, and he treated those lives with respect. Throughout his career, he covered major national events. He reported on criminal trials that shaped public opinion and influenced policy conversations. He stood outside courthouses for hours, sometimes in rain or heat, always committed to getting every detail right. Viewers trusted him because he never exaggerated. He never rushed to judgment. He delivered the facts with steady calm, even when the world felt chaotic. In the mid-body of his career, James became a mentor to younger journalists. They admired his patience. They admired his discipline. Many describe him as the person who taught them how to remain calm. When breaking news arrived without warning, he knew how to guide a newsroom through the storm. Friends say he loved journalism because it allowed him to serve the public. He believed transparency made the country safer. He believed accountability mattered. And he believed that good reporting could push society toward fairness. James's passing on November 12, 2025, came as a shock to many. It felt sudden. It felt heavy. Within hours, tributes began to pour in from colleagues, anchors, producers, and fans who had followed his work for years. One anchor wrote, "James was the voice you trusted on the hardest days. He never raised his tone. He never made himself a story. He simply gave us the truth." A longtime friend shared another message. "He was the definition of calm under pressure. We all learned from him and we're better because of it." These tributes reflected a consistent truth. James Avila's presence made people feel grounded. His reporting helped viewers navigate fear, confusion, and uncertainty. And in a world full of noise, his quiet strength stood out. Even during difficult times in the industry, James stayed committed to his craft. He understood the challenges facing journalism. He understood how trust could be lost, and he worked every day to protect it. His voice became a reminder that responsible journalism still mattered. In his final years at ABC, James continued covering legal stories with the same clarity that had defined his career. He slowed down slightly, but he never stepped away from the work he loved. Reporting was not just a job, it was his way of serving the public. It was his way of making sense of the world. Colleagues remember his humor behind the scenes. He enjoyed small jokes during commercial breaks. He enjoyed quiet conversations in hallways. He enjoyed talking about the cases long after the cameras stopped rolling. He brought warmth into the newsroom without needing to be the center of attention. As the news of his passing spreads, people are remembering not only his voice, but his presence, steady, reliable, reassuring. In an age of fast takes and loud debates, James offered something different. He offered balance. He offered context. And he offered humanity. His career was shaped by a simple belief: justice deserves honesty. Viewers could feel that every time he appeared on screen. Tonight, the journalism world feels a little quieter. A trusted voice is missing. A guiding presence is gone. But the lessons he left will continue to echo in newsrooms across the country. His legacy lives in every young reporter he mentored. It lives in every case he helped the public understand. And it lives in the trust he built with millions of viewers who depended on him not for drama, but for truth. As this chapter closes, we remember James Avila as a reporter who gave clarity in confusion, dignity in chaos, and calm in the moments when the nation needed it most. And though he is gone, his voice, steady, fair, and honest, will remain a lasting part of America's story of justice. A soft wave of disbelief moved through the music community today, as news spread of the passing of saxophonist and bandleader Cleto Escobedo III. He was the sound behind the laughter, the rhythm behind the monologue, and for millions of late-night viewers, his music felt like home. Cleto Escobedo III was born and raised in Las Vegas, a city built on lights, movement, and endless sound. Music was everywhere, and he absorbed it naturally. His father, a respected musician himself, placed instruments in his hands early. The saxophone became more than a tool. It became an extension of who he was. He grew up chasing melody. Practice rooms, school bands, local gigs, each moment added another layer to his craft. Friends remember how young Cleto would close his eyes while playing, letting emotion guide every note. Even then, people said he had feel, a quality you can't teach. His early years were full of exploration. He played with local bands, then regional groups, and eventually began touring beyond Nevada. The more he performed, the more confident he became. He understood timing. He understood showmanship. And he understood the joy of sharing music with strangers who instantly felt like family. But the turning point came through friendship. Cleto's longtime bond with comedian Jimmy Kimmel began in childhood. They were classmates first, then collaborators, then brothers in art. When Jimmy entered late-night television, there was never a question about who would lead the house band. Cleto was the natural choice. A musician with skill, humor, and loyalty, someone who understood the heartbeat of the show. When Jimmy Kimmel Live debuted, millions met him for the first time, standing with his saxophone, smiling at the camera, ready to play the first note of a new era. His sound became part of the show's DNA. Night after night, he brought life to the stage. He wasn't just background music. He was energy, warmth, a presence viewers trusted. Midway through the show's run, Cleto's performances became a quiet staple. He introduced guests. He riffed between jokes. He navigated live moments with calm control. And he made the music feel effortless. Even during nights when the pressure behind the scenes ran high, his bandmates often mentioned how smooth he was. One musician said, Cleto never panicked. Even when things went sideways, he'd flash a smile and bring the whole room back. Fans noticed that too. His relaxed style, his ability to connect without saying a word. He never tried to dominate the stage. He simply filled it with rhythm. But there was more to Cleto's story than the studio lights. Throughout his life, he carried the heart of a family man. He spoke often about his parents. He spoke about the people who trusted him, taught him, and stood by him during long nights on the road. Music shaped him, but family grounded him. Behind the cameras, he was known as gentle, warm, and quick with a laugh. His kindness wasn't dramatic or loud, it was steady, dependable. Crew members often said he was the spirit of the building, the person who made the long hours feel easier. His sudden departure from the show surprised many. It marked the end of an era, and viewers immediately felt the absence. The stage looked different without his familiar presence. The music sounded different without his touch. And though the show continued, his unique style remained unmistakable. Tributes began appearing almost immediately after his passing was confirmed. Fellow musicians thanked him for years of inspiration. Fans shared clips of their favorite musical moments. One post read, "Cleto didn't just play notes. He made you feel like you belonged in the room." In the middle years of his career, he opened his own music house, a space for musicians to rehearse, create, and dream. It became a home for young talent, a place filled with instruments, laughter, and the smell of fresh coffee during early practice sessions. For many, it was their first real stage. Cleto treated them like equals, not beginners. He believed music was meant to be shared, that it should live in families, communities, and friendships. His studio became proof of that belief, even as his health faced challenges later on. He never stopped making music. Friends say he played whenever he could, sometimes for audiences, sometimes just for himself. The saxophone remained close, still warm in his hands, still familiar against his breath. His passing now leaves a quiet ache, a silence where melody once lived. But the impact he made on television, on his community, and on the musicians who followed him remained strong. People often talk about legacy in big terms: awards, honors, fame. But Cleto's legacy is simpler and maybe richer. It lives in the moments he created, the laughter he underscored, the friendships he kept, the young artists he encouraged, the millions of viewers who ended their day with the sound of his saxophone. Drifting through the room tonight, many are sharing one of his old quotes, spoken softly in an interview years ago. "Music isn't just something I do. It's where I feel most like myself." Those words feel heavier now, and more beautiful as the lights dim and the stage falls quiet. Cleto Escobedo III is remembered not just as a bandleader, but as a companion to countless evenings in American homes, a man whose sound framed memories, eased difficult days, and turned ordinary nights into warm rituals. His melody will continue to echo through recordings, through students, through friends, and through the family who loved him long before the spotlight found him. And as this chapter closes, we remember him for what he truly was: a heartbeat of late night, a spirit of rhythm, and a friend whose music will keep playing long after the final note fades. A quiet silence settles over the legal world today, as news confirms the passing of Stanley M. Chesley, a man once known as a king of class actions. He leaves behind a story shaped by ambition, brilliance, conflict, and the heavy truth that every legacy carries both light and shadow. Stanley Chesley's journey began far from the spotlight. Born to immigrant parents in Cincinnati, he grew up in a modest neighborhood, where determination was more common than opportunity. Those early years shaped him. They taught him discipline, the value of hard work, and the belief that justice could change lives. Friends from his childhood often said he was serious even as a boy, focused, driven, someone who read long after others had gone home. That energy followed him to law school, and later into the courtroom, where he quickly built a name for himself. By the 1970s and 80s, he was not just another attorney. He was a force. His rise came at a time when class action lawsuits were transforming American justice. Corporate wrongdoing, negligence, environmental harm. These cases were complicated, expensive, and often impossible for one person to fight alone. Chesley stepped into that world with confidence. He brought strategy, innovation, and the ability to unite thousands of voices into one powerful legal message. One of his most well-known victories came during the early years of mass tort litigation. His work in high-profile cases led to some of the largest settlements in American history. Families praised him. Communities thanked him. Politicians took notice. A former colleague once said, when Stanley walked into a room, you knew something big was about to happen. It was praise he heard often, even from those who didn't always agree with him. But behind those large numbers and headlines were real people, survivors, families, victims who had been ignored for years. Chesley often spoke about them in interviews, saying he felt a responsibility to those who had no voice. Those close to him recall that he kept letters from clients in his office, reminders of the people he fought for. Still, his story would not remain one of triumph alone. In the later years of his career, controversy began to cloud his legacy. The Kentucky Fen-Phen settlement, once seen as another major victory, became the center of accusations, investigations, and professional disaster. Courts found ethical violations tied to the handling of settlement funds. The fallout was severe. In 2013, Chesley was disbarred in Kentucky. Later, he faced additional legal challenges in Ohio. For a man who once commanded national respect, the fall was stunning. News commentators at the time described it as one of the most dramatic legal collapses in decades. Critics questioned his choices. Supporters struggled to understand how a lawyer of such discipline could fall so far. And Chesley himself fell into a quiet life away from public attention. Yet even then, those close to him insisted the man behind the headlines was more complicated than the story suggested. His family remembers a father who encouraged education, a husband who stayed deeply involved in community causes, and a man who continued to support charitable organizations, even when his own reputation was under fire. One longtime friend said in a tribute posted online today, "Stanley made mistakes and he paid for them. But he never stopped believing in justice, even when the system turned toward him." Another wrote, "He was brilliant, flawed, and unforgettable." That was Stanley. As he grew older, Chesley became more reflective. He rarely gave interviews, but in one of his final public statements, he said something that now feels especially meaningful. A legacy isn't just about the wins. It's about what you learn, who you help, and how you face the truth when it comes for you. Those words echo today as the legal community tries to make sense of his passing. In these quieter paragraphs of his life, it becomes clear that his story was never just about law. It was about the human struggle behind ambition, the rise toward achievement, and the weight of consequences that followed. His life showed that even the strongest careers are vulnerable, and even giants of the courtroom stand before the same mirror as everyone else. Yet, for all the conflict and complexity, there is another part of his legacy worth remembering. Stanley Chesley changed how class action law worked in America. He helped shape the legal framework that protects consumers today. His early work opened doors for victims who once had nowhere to turn. He inspired a generation of attorneys who saw the power of collective action. Several young lawyers wrote tributes today, calling him a pioneer and one of the sharpest minds to ever stand before a judge. Those contributions cannot be erased by the difficult chapters that came later. They exist alongside them, forming a full picture of a career marked by both brilliance and human limitation. And perhaps that is the lesson at the center of his life, that legacies are not simple, not clean, and not perfect. They are layered, complex, and shaped by both the moments we rise and the moments we fall. Tonight, as messages continue to arrive from former colleagues, clients, and critics alike, one theme appears again and again: Stanley M. Chesley left a mark on American law that will not be forgotten. His victories built new pathways for justice. His downfall reshaped conversations about ethics and accountability. And his life, in all its contrast, remains a powerful reminder of the weight carried by those who stand at the front lines of the legal system. In the end, he was more than the titles given to him, more than king of class actions, more than the controversies, more than the headlines. He was a man who chased justice with relentless energy, who believed in the courtroom's power, and who left behind a story that will be studied, debated, and remembered for years to come. As the day closes, the final tribute comes from a former client who wrote simply, "He fought for us when no one else would. And despite everything, that's how I choose to remember him." A legacy shaped by courage, shadowed by mistakes, and carried forward by the people whose lives he touched. Tonight, the chapter of Stanley M. Chesley comes to a close, and the legal world pauses, acknowledging a figure who changed its course, and a life that will be remembered for its impact, its lessons, and its lasting echo in American justice.